I wrote this story in tears and guilty. They say love burns bright, like a flame that keeps you warm through the darkest nights. What they rarely explain is how quickly that same fire can consume everything in its path. My name is Maya. I'm not telling this story to scare anyone or to ask for sympathy. I'm telling it because I have to live with what happened, and silence feels heavier than guilt. I met Leo when we were 16. We sat next to each other in biology class, and what started as shared notes and awkward jokes turned into something bigger. By senior year, we were inseparable. Teachers called us the golden couple. Our friends assumed we would get married someday. We went to prom together, talked about colleges, and made promises that felt real at the time. Back then, loving him felt easy. But growing up changes you in ways you don't notice at first. After high school, life became more complicated. We chose different paths, made new friends, and discovered parts of ourselves we didn't know existed. Leo stayed steady, consistent, devoted, certain about us. But I, on the other hand, began to feel something shifting inside me. The spark I once felt slowly dimmed. I still cared about him deeply, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't the kind of love that builds a future. I realized the truth sometime during our 4th year together. He was talking excitedly about apartments we might rent one day, about baby names he liked, about growing old side by side. I remember smiling and nodding, even though my chest felt tight. Every time he spoke about forever, I felt the weight of a lie pressing down on me. I told myself I just needed time. I told myself love comes in phases. I convinced myself that staying was kinder than leaving. But staying when your heart has already left is its own form of cruelty. On Valentine's Day that year was important to him. He hinted about it for weeks, telling me to dress nice and to keep the evening free. He made reservations at a restaurant we could barely afford when we first started dating. He gave me a necklace wrapped in careful, trembling hands. Throughout dinner, he was nervous but excited. I felt dread building quietly inside me, like a storm forming on the horizon. After dinner, he suggested we take a walk along the pier. The night air was sharp and cold, and the water below churned restlessly in the darkness. There were couples everywhere, laughing, taking pictures, holding hands. The moonlight reflected off the bay, silver and beautiful. It would have been romantic if my stomach hadn't been twisted into knots. Then he stopped walking, in the middle of the pier, surrounded by strangers who quickly sensed something special was happening. Leo took a slow breath and dropped to one knee. Gasps rippled through the small crowd that had gathered. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear him at first. Maya, he said, his voice shaking, you are my everything. Will you make me the happiest man alive and marry me? He held out a ring that sparkled under the lights. I knew him well enough to understand what that ring represented. It wasn't just a question. It was years of saving, planning, believing. It was his entire future placed gently in my hands. The crowd waited. I saw phones raised, people smiling in anticipation. They expected joy, tears, applause. But all I felt was the crushing certainty that if I said yes, I would be lying in the worst possible way. My throat burned. I looked at him with the thought of a boy who had loved me faithfully for years, who trusted me completely, and I forced myself to speak. Leo, I whispered, barely able to form the words. I can't. I'm so sorry. I don't love you the way I used to. The words hung in the air, heavy and irreversible. At first, he didn't react. It was as if he hadn't understood. Then I watched the realization settle in. The warmth in his expression drained away. His eyes didn't just dim, they fractured. I had never seen that kind of pain on someone's face before. Not anger, not disbelief. Something deeper, something broken. He slowly stood up, but he wasn't looking at me anymore. He wasn't looking at the ring either. His gaze shifted past the crowd, past the lights, toward the dark water below. Leo, I said, reaching for him. Everything happened too quickly. Before I could grab his arm, before anyone could process what was unfolding, he turned and climbed onto the railing. There were screams, then followed by a sharp panic. He jumped. The sound of his body hitting the water was sickening. Not loud, just final. People rushed forward. Someone called emergency services. A few brave strangers dove in after him despite the freezing temperature. I stood frozen, my mind refusing to accept what had just happened. 10 minutes felt like 10 lifetimes. When they finally pulled him from the water, his body was limp and pale under the flashing red and blue lights. They tried to revive him on the pier. They tried again in the ambulance, but it wasn't enough. By the time they reached the hospital, he was gone. Everyone told me it wasn't my fault. They said I couldn't control his actions. They said he must have been struggling with more than I knew. Maybe that's true, but I can't escape the fact that I stayed when I should have left. I let him build dreams around promises I wasn't sure I could keep. I chose comfort over honesty until honesty exploded in the worst possible way. I didn't kill him with my hands. I didn't push him. I didn't tell him to jump. But I fed him hope long after my heart had stopped believing in it. If there's anything to take from this, it's this. Kindness without truth is not kindness at all. When love changes, say it. When your heart shifts, be brave enough to admit it. Because some hearts don't bend. They don't slowly mend. Sometimes, when they break, they simply stop. I had been studying abroad for almost a year, and loneliness was something I never truly got used to. New country, new language, new culture. Everything felt exciting at first, but also isolating. The only thing that kept me grounded during that time was Julian. We met on a language exchange app. It started casually, correcting each other's grammar, laughing at mispronunciations, sending voice notes. But within weeks, our conversations shifted from friendly to intimate. We spent hours on video calls. We texted constantly. We shared secrets, childhood memories, future dreams. Over time, he became the person I told everything to. He knew when I had exams, when I felt homesick, when I couldn't sleep. He said he loved me first. I hesitated at the time, but eventually, I said it back and I meant it. At least, I believed I did. After a year of daily communication, thousands of messages, and endless promises, meeting him felt like the most natural next step. When my university announced a week-long holiday around Valentine's Day, it felt like fate. I booked a flight without overthinking it. I imagined running into his arms at the airport, finally feeling his warmth instead of seeing him through a screen. I packed carefully, even bringing a dress I thought he would love. I told myself this would be the beginning of something real, and there will be no more distance, no more time zones. The excitement followed me all the way across the ocean. But the moment I landed at his country, something shifted. I called Julian as soon as I stepped off the plane. Instead of the enthusiasm I expected, his voice sounded distracted and rushed, almost irritated. "I'm so sorry, babe," he said quickly. "Work is insane today and I can't leave the office. But don't worry, I've sent a private cab for you. The driver's a trusted friend. He'll bring you straight to my place." I tried not to feel disappointed. After all, people have responsibilities. Still, I had just flown thousands of miles for him. I stood at the arrival's gate for nearly 40 minutes, watching strangers reunite with hugs and laughter. And that makes my excitement slowly blended with unease. Eventually, a silver sedan pulled up near the curb. The driver, a middle-aged man with an empty, almost mechanical expression, leaned slightly out of the window. "Are you Liza?" he asked. My heart skipped. "How do you know my name?" I asked, tightening my grip on my suitcase handle. Without speaking, he held up his phone. On the screen was a recent photo of me, the one I had sent Julian just an hour earlier, taken in the airport restroom mirror. So I know immediately this is the private cab he hired for me. Relief washed over me, though it felt thin. I convinced myself I was overreacting. I got into the car. The drive felt longer than it should have. The driver barely spoke. He didn't play music. He didn't make small talk. He just drove, eyes fixed ahead. When we finally arrived, Julian's house stood isolated from the neighboring homes. It was modern, sleek, but strangely dark. Inside, Julian greeted me with a quick hug. It felt stiff, not like the embrace I had imagined for months. He was hunched over his laptop in the living room. Multiple spreadsheets and what looked like complicated schedules open on the screen. "Sit down, I just need to finish this," he said casually, barely looking at me. I tried to ignore the strange energy in the air. I grabbed a soda from the fridge and told myself I was just tired from travel. Later that evening, we went out for Valentine's dinner. The restaurant was nice. The food is expensive. The lighting romantic, but the connection felt off. He kept checking his phone. His laughter felt forced, but I brushed it aside again. On the drive back to his house, I looked out the window and froze. 2 blocks away, parked beneath a street lamp, was the same silver sedan that had picked me up from the airport. My stomach tightened. Why was the driver still here? Back inside the house, I told myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Then I went upstairs to freshen up. In the bathroom, hanging neatly behind the door, was a red silk dress. It wasn't mine. It wasn't even my size. A cold wave of dread moved through me. Was there another woman? Had I been naive this entire time? As I reached for my towel, a smell hit me. It was faint at first, then sweet and rotten at the same time. Like spoiled meat buried under heavy perfume. I checked the sink, the shower drain, even the trash bin. But all leads to nothing. Then I noticed something odd. A small brass button embedded discreetly in the side of the door frame. My hand hovered over it and I pressed it. With a soft mechanical hiss, a section of the tiled wall slid open. Behind it was darkness. My breath became shallow. I turned on my phone flashlight and stepped inside. The passage was narrow and claustrophobic. Each step felt heavier than the last. At the end of the corridor was a small hidden room. What I saw there shattered something inside me forever. 2 women lay on the floor lifeless, their bodies mutilated. Part of their body is missing, in a way that made it horrifyingly clear they weren't simply victims of rage. They were being harvested. On a nearby table sat a ledger. It listed names, dates, and prices with buyers. It means they were selling part of the body. My body went numb. I felt like I was watching someone else's nightmare. I backed away slowly, fighting the urge to scream. I pressed the button again, sealing the wall shut. My hands were shaking uncontrollably as I stepped into the hallway. Julian was standing at the bottom of the stairs. He was staring at me. I forced myself to breathe. I didn't run. I didn't grab my bags. I walked down calmly, though my heart was slamming so violently I thought I might faint. I ran out of juice, I stammered, holding up my empty soda can as proof. There's a convenience store nearby, right? Can we go? He studied my face carefully. His eyes were different now. His eyes are sharp, calculating, suspicious. After a long pause, he nodded. Fine. We walked together to the 24-hour convenience store. Each step felt like I was walking beside a loaded weapon. Inside, I noticed a security guard near the back of the store. I approached him slowly, pretending to ask about the price of a snack. When Julian turned slightly away, I leaned closer and whispered, "The man with me is a killer. Please call the police. Please help me." The guard's face stiffened, but he nodded subtly. 10 minutes later, police cruisers arrived. I ran toward them, crying, shaking, trying to explain everything at once. So the officers searched Julian's house immediately. But when they entered the bathroom and pressed along the walls, there was nothing. No button, no hidden passage, no bodies. The space was normal, clean. Julian denied everything calmly. Without physical evidence in that moment, they couldn't arrest him. Still, they saw the state I was in. They let me stay at the station overnight. I barely slept. Every sound made me flinch. The next morning, I booked the earliest flight home. I didn't tell Julian. I didn't say goodbye. I don't know how he removed everything so quickly. I don't know how long he had been doing it, but I know what I saw. And somewhere out there, Julian and the quiet man in the silver sedan are still waiting for their next Valentine target. Valentine's Day in high school has always been a strange mix of excitement and quiet embarrassment. Hallways fill with red balloons, heart-shaped candies, and nervous confessions. For most people, it feels important. For me, it was usually just another ordinary day. I didn't have a boyfriend. I wasn't one of the popular girls who receive public surprises or loud declarations of love. I was just there, invisible most of the time. That's why when I walked into homeroom that morning and saw a bouquet of red roses sitting neatly on my desk, I immediately assumed it was a joke. I stopped in the doorway, scanning the room, waiting for someone to laugh. But no one did. Everyone was busy talking, scrolling through their phones, were finishing homework. No one was even looking at me. Slowly, I walked to my seat. The roses looked real, fresh, deep red, tied together with a thin white ribbon. There was no card attached. My heart began to pound, not just from excitement, but from confusion. Who would send me flowers? I barely focused during class. My mind kept racing through possibilities, but none of them made sense. At lunch, things became even stranger. When I opened my textbook to study before my next class, a folded piece of paper slipped out and landed on the table. I froze. I was sure it hadn't been there earlier. My fingers felt shaky as I unfolded it. Written in elegant cursive handwriting were the words, "I love you. Can you be my Val?" From Anonymous. For a moment, warmth spread through me. Someone liked me. Someone had noticed me. But that warmth quickly turned into something colder. How had the note gotten inside my textbook? I hadn't left my bag unattended for long. And the handwriting. It was careful, almost too careful. Like someone had taken their time making it perfect. The rest of the school day felt different. I kept catching myself glancing over my shoulder. I had the uncomfortable feeling that someone was watching me, studying my reactions. When the final bell rang, I walked home faster than usual. Halfway down the sidewalk, I thought I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around, but see no one. The street was quiet. A few parked cars, a breeze moving through bare branches. I told myself I was imagining it. Still, the uneasy feeling stayed with me all the way home. When I got there, my mom wasn't back yet. She had gone out to run errands. The house felt unusually silent. I dropped my backpack and went upstairs to change out my uniform. I had just pulled my sweater over my head when I heard a knock. The sound was sharp and deliberate. My heart jumped. I hurried downstairs with my school uniform still on and opened the front door. No one was there, just the empty street glowing under the late afternoon sun. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. I stepped outside and looked around. I found nothing. A chill crept up my spine. I closed the door and locked it carefully. 10 minutes later, it happened again. A knock came through. This time, before I could reach the handle, I heard something slide across the floor. When I opened the door, the porch was empty again, but a white slip of paper lay just inside the doorway. I picked it up, slowly read the contents in it. Can you be my Val? I'll ask you again. My hands started trembling. This wasn't funny anymore. The sun began to set, and the house seemed to grow colder as the light faded. Shadows stretched longer across the walls. Every small sound, like the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock, they felt louder than usual. When my mom finally came home, she looked confused. There was a note on the doorstep, she said, handing it to me. It says, "Letter to Eliza. Can you be my Val? I'm asking the 4th time. Do you know what this is about?" I forced a small shrug, pretending I didn't understand either. But inside, fear was starting to replace any excitement I had felt earlier. Then my phone buzzed from an unknown number. I stared at the screen for a long moment before opening the message. It says it's me, the guy with the letters. Meet me at the old oak tree behind the school tomorrow morning at 7:10. I want to show you who I am. The old oak tree was right behind the playground. Students passed by it every day on their way into school. It wasn't some abandoned location. It was public, visible. That made it feel safer. I don't know why I texted yes back. Maybe I wanted answers. Maybe I still hope this was just a shy boy trying to confess his feelings in a dramatic way. The next morning, I arrived earlier than usual. The sky was pale gray, and a heavy mist hung low over the playground. The swings creaked softly in the wind. The school building stood quiet and still. I walked toward the old oak tree. Its branches stretched wide and twisted, casting strange shadows in the fog. I checked the time and it was 7:08. I waited till 7:25. Still no one showed up. My nerves were completely on edge. Every small movement in the mist made my heart race. Then, suddenly, I felt it. A light brush against the back of my neck. I gasped and spun around, screaming. There was no one there. No footsteps. No voice. Just the wind moving through the leaves. My breathing was heavy as I slowly turned back toward the tree. Pinned to the trunk was a small red paper heart. My name was written on it. I didn't wait any longer. I grabbed my bag and ran toward the school building, my shoes hitting the pavement harder than ever before. I reached the assembly hall just as the clock turned 7:40. Students were filing in, chatting and laughing like it was a normal morning. But nothing felt normal to me anymore. No one ever came forward. No one confessed. The messages stopped after that day. Yet sometimes, when I'm sitting quietly in class, I feel it again, that same heavy awareness. Like someone is sitting behind me, staring at the back of my head. I never turn around now, because deep down, I'm afraid that one day, I might finally see who has been waiting for my answer all along.